For one thing, because it saves trouble." And as she murmured that all-sufficient reason, the gentle damsel nodded reflectively. But one of her companions, more lively for the moment, tickled her with a straw until she roused, and then said, "Let us take the stranger to the boat garden now. The current will drift us round the bay, and we can come back when it turns. If we wait we shall have to row in both directions, or even walk." And again planetary slothfulness carried the day. So down to the beach we strolled, and launched one of the golden-hued skiffs upon the pretty dancing wavelets just where they ran, lipped with jewelled spray on the shore, and then only had I a chance to scrutinize their material. I patted that one we were upon inside and out. I noted with a seaman's admiration its lightness, elasticity, and supreme sleekness, its marvellous buoyancy and fairy-like lines, and after some minutes' consideration it suddenly flashed upon me that it was all of gourd rind. And, as if to supply confirmation, the flat land we were approaching on the opposite side of the bay was covered by the characteristic verdure of these plants with a touch here and there of splendid yellow blossoms, but all of gigantic proportions. "Ay," said a Martian damsel lying on the bottom, and taking and kissing my hand as she spoke, in the simple-hearted way of her people. "I see you have guessed how we make our boats. Is it the same in your distant country?" "No, my girl, and what's more, I am a bit uneasy as to what the fellows on the Carolina will say if they ever hear I went to sea in a hollowed-out pumpkin, and with a young lady, well, dressed as you are, for a crew. Even now I cannot imagine how you get your ship so trim and shapely. There is not a seam or a patch anywhere. It looks as if you had run them into a mould." "That's just what we have done, sir, and now you will witness the moulds at work, for here we are." And the little skiff was pulled ashore, and the Martians and I jumped on the shelving beach, hauled our boat up high and dry, and right there over us, like great green umbrellas, spread the fronds of the outmost garden of this strangest of all shipbuilding yards. Briefly, and not to make this part of my story too long, those gilded boys and girls took me ashore, and chattering like finches in the evening, showed how they planted their gourd seed, nourished the gigantic plants as they grew with brackish water in the burnt ashes, then, when they had flowered, mated the male and female blossoms, glorious funnels of golden hue big enough for one to live in, and when the young fruit was of the bigness of an ordinary bolster, how they slipped it into a double mould of open reed-work something like two halves of a walnut shell, and how, growing day by day in this, it soon took every curve and line they chose to give it, even the hanging keel below, the strengthened bulwarks, and tall prow-piece. It was so ingenious, yet simple, and I confess I laughed over my first skiff "on the stalk," and fell bantering to the Martians, asking whether it was a good season for navies, whether their grenadiers were spreading nicely, if they could give me a pinch of barge seed, or a yacht in bud to show my friends at home. But those lazy people took the matter seriously enough. They led me down green alleys arched over with huge melon-like leaves. They led me among innumerable byways, making me peep and peer through the checkered sunlight at ocean-growing craft that had budded 12 months before, already filling their moulds to the last inch of space. They told me that when the growing process was sufficiently advanced, they loosened the casing, and cutting a hole into the interior of each giant fruit, scooped out all its seed, thereby checking more advance, and throwing into the rind strength that would otherwise have gone into reproductiveness. They said each fruit made 2 vessels, but the upper half was always best, and used for long salt-water journeys, the lower piece being but for punting or fishing on the lakes. They cut them in half while still green, scraped out the light remaining pulp when dry, and dragged them down with the minimum of trouble, light as feathers, tenacious as steel plate, and already in the form and fashion of dainty craft from 5 to 20 feet in length, when the process was completed. By the time we had explored this strangest of shipbuilding yards, and I had seen last year's crop on the stocks being polished and fitted with seats and gears, the sun was going down, and the Martian twilight, owing to the comparative steepness of the little planet's sides, being brief. We strolled back to the village, and there they gave me harbourage for the night, ambrosial supper, and a deep draught of the wine of forgetfulness, under the gauzy spell of which the real and unreal melted into vistas of rosy oblivion, and I slept. End of Chapter 10.